Hi there, welcome to Spain Unfiltered and to what is a very impromptu video. Yesterday afternoon, Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez unveiled a series of measures aimed at tackling the nation's housing crisis, and these measures could potentially have huge repercussions for the international housing market here in Spain. Among the most controversial proposals, and definitely the proposal that's led to the most dramatic headlines outside of Spain, is that a 100% property purchase tax may be levied on non-resident, non-EU buyers, alongside regulations on tourist apartments like Airbnbs to curb their impact on local rental markets. So in this video, I'm going to take a closer look at this proposal. I'll explain exactly what it means and what the repercussions could be for non-EU citizens looking to purchase property in Spain. I'll look at the political and legal process that has to be followed for it to become law in Spain and discuss the reception that the proposals have received across Spain's political spectrum. Finally, I'll give my own personal insight into what I think will happen if these proposals are enacted. Before I do that, I think it's important to explain the background to Pedro Sanchez's announcement in order to understand what it is that he's trying to achieve. Spain's housing market has been under immense pressure in recent years. House prices have surged by an average of 48% across Europe in the past decade, whereas wages have failed to grow at anywhere near the same pace. Also in Spain, social housing accounts for less than 3% of the total housing stock, which is significantly below the European average of 9%. This limited supply of affordable housing disproportionately affects young people, working class families and residents in urban centres like Madrid and Barcelona. Sanchez's measures aim to address these structural issues. Around 30,000 properties currently held by Sarab, a state-controlled bank set up to manage distressed assets following the credit crunch, will be converted into social housing. He also aims to regulate speculative investment and stabilise rental markets by offering tax incentives to landlords who lease out their properties at a state-sanctioned rental rate. The focus is on creating a more equitable housing system, protecting vulnerable groups from the financial strain of skyrocketing rent and property prices. One of the key drivers of housing shortages in popular destinations like Barcelona is the proliferation of tourist apartments, particularly short-term rental platforms like Airbnb. By diverting housing stock away from long-term residents to cater for tourists, these rentals contribute to inflated rental prices and they exacerbate housing shortages. This problem's been topical in Spain for a number of years, with laws introduced to require registration and licensing of short-term rentals. Much of the application of the existing laws is the responsibility of regional governments and local municipalities, and in recent years we've seen a varied approach to their application, with fairly sparse enforcement in areas which were built with residential tourism as a driving force, contrasted against complete bans on new licences in hotspots where short-term lets have a significant impact on rental prices for local residents. Alicante City only recently put a 2-year block on new licences. There's a whole chapter dedicated to these restrictions in my book, so please, links in the description. Sanchez's new plan includes stricter regulations on illegal tourist rentals. A dedicated inspection fund will be put in place, and the reclassification of tourist apartments to be taxed as businesses will become a thing. This seems to indicate a more centralised approach to managing tourist accommodation licences, and I'll seek to add more information about this on my website in the not too distant future. Of course, the biggest news story to come out of these proposals is the 100% purchase tax. Now, the proposal is to impose a 100% purchase tax on non-EU non-residents. It's created widespread debate. First, let me explain what it means. Currently, anyone who purchases a property in Spain, regardless of their nationality or residency status, will pay a tax on the purchase price called ETP, Impuesto sobre Trámites Patronales. Now, this rate varies throughout Spain, but typically is between 8 and 12% of the purchase price. The new proposals would allow a tax of up to 100% to be levied on buyers who are not resident in Spain and who are not EU citizens, effectively pricing them out of the market. Obviously, such a dramatic change in a country that's courted international property investment for decades has caused significant waves. The first and most important thing to note is this is a proposal and not enacted legislation. For the proposal to become law, it will first have to pass through Spain's legislative process, including approval by the Council of Ministers, debate in the Congress of Deputies, and review by the Senate. Unless specific measures are enacted to expedite the implementation, we would be looking at late 2025, early 2026 before the proposals became law. So If you're in the process of buying a property and you're concerned that you're going to be hit with a bill of 100%, then don't be. We're a long way off of that point yet. Beyond the legal loops to jump through, there's also significant opposition coming from within Spain. Sanchez leads a minority government, and while the reforms have been welcomed by his coalition partners such as Sumar, they have faced sharp criticism from opposition parties. The People's Party, PP, has strongly opposed the measures. They argue that they undermine foreign investment and fail to address the root causes of the housing crisis. PP leaders have proposed alternative solutions, including unlocking public land for housing development and reducing bureaucratic barriers to construction. The PP spokesperson, Borja Samper, criticised this 100% tax proposal as being damaging to Spain's economy and reputation as a property investment destination. The far-right party Vox has labelled the measures as populist and anti-business, claiming they'll discourage entrepreneurship and worsen economic inequality. Now, while we would expect there to be ideological differences between the political parties, there are some very practical differences with regards to the regional governments. Spain has 17 autonomous regions, each of which has its own government. So far, we've seen mixed reaction from the autonomous regions, and it's really significant because it's the autonomous regions in Spain who have the competency to decide the rate of transfer tax available in their region. For example, in Alicante, it's set as 10%, whereas in Murcia, it's set at 8%. While Sanchez's government may be able to enable the autonomous regions to increase the rate up to 100%, it would still be up to those local governments to decide how they wish to implement it. If the proposal becomes law, it's unlikely to be applied uniformly across the country. Instead, I suspect that we would see the tax used to target extreme hotspots like Madrid, where housing shortages are most acute, and large North American investment funds have been acquiring vast amounts of commercial and residential real estate. Conversely, regions that have large stocks of touristic apartments built specifically for the international market and which have significant international populations are likely to resist the measures due to their reliance on that international investment and the negative economic impact that the tax would have at a local level. This has been highlighted by real estate analysts who have noted the potential for localised impacts, with areas like Orihuela Costa and the Costa del Sol potentially suffering economic setbacks if foreign buyer demand was diminished. Now, one thing we don't currently know is how the tax would affect new build sales, as they're not subject to ITP, transfer tax, but VAT, which is set at a national level. I'll be keeping an avid eye out for clarification there. So to sum up, Sanchez's housing reforms represent a bold attempt to address Spain's housing crisis, and the headlines are certainly and understandably quite dramatic. I have to say that I think that the intention behind these reforms is very valid. It is very hard for young people to find accommodation and even harder to get on the housing ladder, not just in Spain, or other countries throughout Europe as well. And something has to be done to resolve that situation. If it's not done through government intervention, eventually the markets would have to correct themselves. I also want to stress again at this point that these are only proposals at this stage. And so if you've already started the purchase process of buying a property in Spain, you do not need to be concerned about the current tax rate. Looking forwards, I expect that there will be a lot of political and legal wrangling before any of the more controversial proposals become law, and there is a very significant chance that they will never truly see the light of day. There's lots of opposition to the 100% tax rate, both within Spain and internationally, and speculation that it is more of an example of political manoeuvring than an actual serious policy. However, if the proposals do make it through the process to become law, I personally don't think that we would see a blanket 100% purchase tax levied across the whole of the country. While it could have a positive influence on the market in specific hotspots, it could have a devastating impact on other areas that, rather than being negatively impacted by residential tourism, are largely dependent on it. For non-EU retirees looking to settle in Spain, while the proposed measures have not entirely closed the door to property ownership, if they come into force, it's still possible to rent a property while looking for residency, and once resident, you could purchase a property at exactly the same tax rate as a Spanish citizen. And while this seems like an additional hurdle, renting while obtaining residency is a route that more and more people are taking anyway, regardless of the tax rate. Of course, there's plenty of information about visas and the residency process available in my book, links in the description below. The biggest impact by far will be on holiday homes, and while the non-EU market is still significant, the main market for holiday home buyers is from within the EU itself and would therefore remain unchanged. Over the next few months, we will hear more and we will get more clarification as this moves through the legislative process. And I, for one, will be following this story throughout. So please do like and subscribe. Keep an eye on my website, www.spainunfiltered.com, where I will keep this information up to date. For my more regular viewers, there are a few videos currently in production, including a whole new format that I really hope you're going to love. So please do keep your eye on the channel, as they will be coming in due course. In the meantime, thanks for watching. I will see you soon.